Caitlin Clark's injury changed everything. Not just her role, but how the Indiana Fever evaluated the value of their entire roster. And it may have inadvertently sealed Kelsey Mitchell's fate. What was once seen as a two-star foundation now looked more replaceable when the team found unexpected production from depth pieces like McDonald and Carlson. Clark's forced absence revealed an offense that didn't need to orbit just two stars.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
That revelation made Mitchell's max contract demands harder to justify. Her resignation wasn't just a surprise. It was a ripple effect of a deeper shift in how the franchise views its future. Indiana now stands at a fragile pivot point. The team's chemistry, exposed in both triumph and crisis, is vulnerable to rapid decline without Mitchell's scoring and leadership. At the same time, the league's financial evolution, driven by Clark's growing star power, opens new possibilities, but with new pressure. With the CBA still unresolved, Indiana has only a sliver of time to act once negotiations close. Whether they pay up to retain structure or bet on long-term upside, every move from here on out will define the team's legacy and Clark's future. Kelsey Mitchell has officially resigned, and the Indiana Fever are spiraling. No warning, no cryptic tweets, no PR-friendly mutual parting. Just gone. Out. One of the franchise's best players, their second leading scorer, the steady hand when everything else fell apart, gone in the middle of what should have been their most promising rebuilding years. And now the Fever are stuck in the kind of off-season that could make or break a franchise. They were one win or one bounce away from the WNBA Finals. The roster was finally clicking. Caitlin Clark brought generational hype and an offensive engine unlike anything the league has seen in years. Kelsey Mitchell was a perfect complement, a consistent scorer, a veteran presence, and a player who understood how to lead in the background without chasing headlines. They had depth. They had chemistry. They had momentum. Then came Clark's injury, and that changed everything. When Clark went down, the assumption was that the entire system would collapse, that without her shooting, her passing, her presence, the team would spiral. Instead, the opposite happened. The offense evolved. They adapted. They started moving the ball differently. They played freer, less predictable basketball. Mitchell stepped up, as did McDonald, as did Carlson. The entire dynamic shifted. And in that shift came the hard truth. This team wasn't as dependent on Clark as everyone thought. That's not a knock on Clark. She is the future. But her injury exposed something unexpected. The Fever had depth, and they had a version of themselves that worked, even without her on the court. So when she returned, the front office had a decision to make. Keep Mitchell and the structure that held them together, or double down on building around Clark and start trimming everything else. They chose the latter. Or maybe they waited too long and didn't choose fast enough. And now they've lost Mitchell, their most reliable player not named Caitlin. She didn't wait to be traded. She didn't ask for negotiations. She resigned. That's not just a departure. That's a message. This team is caught between two timelines. And that tension between contending now and building around a single superstar is tearing the roster apart. Mitchell's exit is just the first major blow. What's coming next could be even messier. The franchise is in a freeze, thanks to stalled CBA negotiations. Nothing can really move until the new agreement is signed. And when it is, there's going to be a frenzy, a compressed offseason, a high-stakes game of musical chairs. And the Fever will have to act fast, with fewer resources and more pressure than anyone else. Every team is eyeing the same prize, flexibility. And Caitlin Clark's star power is about to push the salary cap way up. League revenue is growing because of her. Media deals, merch, attendance. It's all going up. That sounds great, until you realize it's also making top-tier players like Mitchell way more expensive. The Fever had a window to lock her down. They let it pass. Now, Mitchell is a high-value free agent in a league that's about to start spending big. The Fever, if they even want to keep her now, would be in a bidding war. And based on how they let her walk, they probably wouldn't win it. So what does that leave? A roster with one franchise star coming off injury. a supporting cast still figuring out their roles, and a front office under fire for letting a critical piece slip away with nothing in return. And none of this even touches the coaching situation. The Fever's current play style, fast, high intensity, aggressive, has come under scrutiny. There's growing belief that the system itself may be contributing to the string of injuries that derailed the team last season. That pace can be thrilling when it works, but if your top players can't stay healthy in it, is it really sustainable? There's talk that a systemic overhaul is needed, not just roster tweaks. A complete rethink of how this team operates. Because building around Caitlin Clark only works if Clark can stay on the court. And right now, with the current system, that's not a guarantee. The problem is, any overhaul will take time. And the Fever don't have it. Not with the league about to shift financially. Not with the CBA compressing timelines. Not with fan and media expectations growing by the day. The media narrative used to be that the Fever were building something. That they had young talent, strong veterans, and a plan to compete in the next 2 to 3 seasons. But that narrative has shifted. Now it's all about Clark. The pressure to win now has skyrocketed, and that shift in narrative has given players like Mitchell new leverage. When the spotlight's on one star, the others either become role players or they leave, and Mitchell chose the latter. This team now faces a binary decision. Keep pushing to win now, build quickly around Clark, and find a replacement for Mitchell that can match your production, or step back, acknowledge that the roster needs work, and go into a slower rebuild with Clark as the centerpiece. Either path is valid, but you can't do both. Trying to ride the line between short-term wins and long-term development will only stretch the roster thin, alienate veterans, and wear down your franchise player. That's the trap the Fever are stuck in right now. Half in, half out. And every day they don't pick a side, they risk losing more. Mitchell's resignation was shocking, but it wasn't isolated. It was a symptom, a sign that the players know what the front office hasn't admitted. This team is in crisis mode. Quiet crisis, maybe, but crisis nonetheless. So where does this go? If the Fever can pivot fast, adjust their coaching philosophy, make smart moves once the CBA opens, and find the right veteran presence to fill Mitchell's void, they might still be able to pull this together. Clark's talent can carry a team, but only if she's surrounded by players who can take pressure off her and keep the offense balanced. But if they don't, if they stall, if they swing and miss in free agency or misread the financial landscape again, they're not just risking another year of mediocre results. They're risking Caitlin Clark's legacy being tied to dysfunction. And if that starts to happen, it's a long road back. This offseason is everything, a fork in the road. And with Mitchell gone, the Fever have made it clear. They've chosen to bet on the unknown. Now, they'll have to live with the consequences. Let us know where you stand. Should the Fever have done everything to keep Mitchell? Was this the right decision for the future, or the start of a massive unraveling? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit like if you're following this off-season meltdown. Share with someone who's still stunned by this move. And subscribe if you want the full story as it keeps unfolding. Because one thing's for sure, this saga isn't over. The Indiana Fever aren't just rebuilding anymore. They're now reconstructing a vision that may have never been fully clear to begin with. Kelsey Mitchell's resignation didn't just leave a roster hole. It exposed a blurred blueprint beneath the surface. For a team that almost reached the WNBA finals, the chaos they're now facing feels disproportionate. But this isn't random. This is what happens when talent, timing, and front office strategy fall out of sync. For years, Mitchell was a constant. Through bad seasons, roster rotations, and coaching changes, she delivered. She wasn't flashy about it. She didn't get the headlines Clark does. But night in and night out, she gave the Fever stability, points, leadership. And when Clark went down, she gave them hope. That hope is now walking out the door. Her resignation didn't come with drama. No public feud. No sources close to the situation. That's what makes it even more jarring. It wasn't reactive. It was calculated. She knew the direction the team was heading, and she knew she no longer fit into it. And whether the Fever are ready to admit it or not, they made this bed. Once Clark arrived, the marketing shifted. The interviews shifted. The narrative shifted. Everything began orbiting around her. That's not unexpected. She's a once-in-a-generation draw. both on the court and at the box office. But when a team pivots its identity around one player, it sends a message to everyone else. You are replaceable. That message just cost them their second-best player. Now, all eyes are on how the Fever plan to respond. Because let's be honest, there's no one currently on that roster who can replicate what Mitchell brought to the table. Her scoring efficiency, her ability to lead an offense without demanding the spotlight, her chemistry with players like McDonald and Smith, these aren't easily replaced. You don't just plug in a rookie or chase a mid-tier free agent and expect the same results. The Fever didn't trade her. They didn't bench her. They didn't let her contract quietly expire. She resigned. In the WNBA, that's rare, and it should be treated like the 5-alarm fire that it is. But that's not the only fire they're juggling. The coaching style, aggressive, run-and-gun, relentless, has already drawn criticism from analysts and former players alike. It's entertaining when it's working, but now it's being blamed for wearing players down, possibly even contributing to Clark's injury. The system demands everything from its stars, but when those stars are sidelined or exhausted, the whole thing collapses. So here's the question. If the system contributes to injury and burnout and it can't retain veteran players like Mitchell, what is it really doing? Because a scheme that burns through both talent and health isn't a system. It's a liability. And with CBA negotiations in limbo, that liability is only growing. Every franchise is currently frozen in place, waiting for the new collective bargaining agreement to be finalized. That means no trades, no contract restructuring, no roster maneuvers. And when that freeze lifts, it's going to be pure mayhem. Teams that have a plan will strike quickly. Teams that don't, they'll fall behind fast. Right now, Indiana does not look like a team with a plan. Their front office is faced with a ticking clock. Once the new salary cap is announced, prices for top players like Mitchell will skyrocket. She will be pursued by every contender looking to add veteran firepower. And unlike Indiana, those teams didn't just fumble their relationship with her. There's a strong possibility the Fever will end up not only losing Mitchell, but also not being able to afford any equivalent replacement. They gambled that she wouldn't walk, and they lost. Now, there's a larger issue looming. Caitlin Clark's development is on the line. Clark didn't come into the WNBA just to play. She came to win. And while she's already a superstar in terms of popularity and marketability, her on-court success will ultimately define her legacy. If she spends the next few seasons stuck in a revolving door, rebuild with inconsistent teammates and coaching turnover, that legacy starts to look a lot more complicated. And this isn't about just one player's legacy. It's about the league's. Clark is, undeniably, one of the faces of the WNBA's growth. Her name is tied to viewership spikes, record-breaking jersey sales, and national media coverage. The Fever are not just managing a basketball player. They're managing an economic engine. But if they can't put a stable, healthy, winning team around her, the momentum they've built could stall. Let's be clear. The WNBA is not the NBA. The margins are tighter. A single player can impact a team's fate dramatically, and losing even one core piece can change the arc of an entire season. So the Fever are now staring down two urgent challenges. First, they have to fill the void left by Mitchell, and they need to do it fast, smart, and under a financial cap that's about to move. Second, they have to reevaluate their internal culture. What's pushing veterans away? Why is injury management concerned? Why does a near contender suddenly look like it's on the verge of implosion? And while we're at it, let's not forget the psychological toll all of this has taken on the rest of the roster. During Clark's absence, players stepped up. They weren't just filling in, they were winning. They proved they had depth. They proved they had heart. But now those same players are being asked to take a step back and watch as the front office pivots around a single star again, despite the team's success they built without her. That's a fragile environment. And if it's not managed carefully, it breeds resentment. Team culture isn't just about who's the loudest in the huddle. It's about who feels valued. Right now, that balance is way off. The media hype around Clark was always going to tilt things, but the front office needed to manage it better. Instead, they let the Clark-era narrative run unchecked while letting key pieces like Mitchell float in contractual uncertainty. And in the WNBA, where loyalty still matters, That kind of ambiguity doesn't sit well. Now, the Fever have one shot at redemption. They need to use the CBA delay as a strategic pause, not a stall. The second that window opens, they have to move. Smart signings, tactical contracts, a clear identity. Because if they treat this offseason like business as usual, they're toast. And Caitlin Clark, for all her greatness, cannot carry a fractured franchise on her back alone. This isn't just about replacing points on a stat sheet. It's about trust, about chemistry, about direction. Mitchell was that direction for years, and now she's gone. If the Fever want to be taken seriously by players, fans, and the rest of the league, they need to act like a franchise that understands the stakes. Because this isn't just about what happens next season. This is about who they are and who they want to be. You don't get many chances to build around a generational player. You don't get many opportunities to contend in a league this competitive. Letting one of your foundational pieces resign while you wait for a contract window to open is not strategy. It's negligence. There's a reason people are still reeling from Kelsey Mitchell's resignation. This wasn't just a player leaving a team. This was a foundational piece stepping away from what was supposed to be a rising empire. And now, that empire looks like it was built on sand. Let's get something straight. The Indiana Fever weren't just close to relevance. They were the story. Caitlin Clark's arrival was seismic. Every network, every analyst, every highlight reel revolved around her debut. The buzz was bigger than basketball. And the Fever? They were the chosen stage. But here's what got lost in the headlines. It wasn't just Clark who was carrying the momentum. It was players like Mitchell who made the team functional. She wasn't riding the wave. She was stabilizing it. She made the offense coherent when Clark got trapped, picked up the scoring load when things stalled, and served as a quiet, steady leader in a locker room suddenly bursting with attention. Now that's gone. And here's the part that should scare Fever fans. There's no clear plan to replace her. Because how do you replace someone who is doing the most important job in the most overlooked way? Mitchell wasn't just putting up numbers. She was making the chaos make sense. And when Clark got injured, it was Mitchell who kept the Fever from spiraling. She didn't ask for headlines. She didn't demand spotlight. She just delivered. So the question is, why did the front office let her walk? The easy answer is money. The salary cap, the looming CBA changes, the financial strain of building around a megastar like Clark. But if we're being honest, that's a convenient excuse. The more likely explanation, the Fever didn't see her as central to their future. And that is wild, because if the post-Clark injury run taught us anything, it's that the Fever are deeper than people thought. But that depth only works when guided by someone who knows how to lead without needing to dominate. That was Mitchell. Now, the structure feels hollow. The system still exists, but the navigator is gone. You can almost feel the instability already. Think about it. Clark is returning from injury. The system around her has been proven both effective and fragile. The coaching staff is under pressure to evolve, or at least prevent another wave of injuries. And now, the player who gave the team veteran balance is no longer in the building. That's not a retool. That's a potential collapse. And with the league on pause as a new CBA gets ironed out, Indiana is stuck in a holding pattern. They can't sign new talent. They can't execute a trade. They can't even rework deals. The clock is frozen, but the consequences are very much in motion. Every team is planning for that post-CBA window. Every franchise is prepping cap space, target lists, and contract strategies. The Fever? They're now behind, with a glaring hole on their roster and no leverage in negotiations. By the time the market opens up, Mitchell will be the name on everyone's board. Because the thing about chaos is, it reveals value. When everything fell apart, she proved she could lead. And in a league where winning is often about poise and timing, that kind of veteran leadership is gold. So let's play this out. Clark comes back healthy. Great. She's dynamic, driven, and ready to go. But the moment defenses start throwing double teams again, who becomes a release valve? Who steps up when the offense stalls? Who fills that leadership void when the younger players start pressing? It's not a rhetorical question. Right now, the answer is no one. Mitchell's departure doesn't just hurt the Fever stats. It messes with the entire flow of how this team operates. And that's not the kind of thing you can fix with a mid-level free agent or a second-round draft pick. It requires vision, urgency, respect for what just walked out the door. And the respect piece is key here. Mitchell gave the Fever years of consistency. She stayed through the rebuild. She kept producing when the team wasn't winning. She helped ease the transition into the Clark era without drama. And this is how it ends? No extension, no celebration, just silence and resignation. It speaks volumes. And it's not just Mitchell who's watching. Other players are too. The WNBA is small. Word gets around. When veterans see how you treat your own, they take notes. If the message is, you're valuable until we find someone shinier, then don't be surprised when future free agents get cold feet. Culture matters. And right now, the Fever's culture looks fractured. Even if the front office manages to spin this as a business decision, it doesn't change the fact that they've created a narrative problem. The media has shifted focus from Indiana's potential to Indiana's instability. The momentum they had after nearly reaching the finals, it's fading fast. Meanwhile, Clark's presence keeps raising the stakes. She's not just a generational talent. She's a brand, a force, a magnet for attention, money, and expectation. And if the Fever can't surround her with a sustainable, competitive roster, they're not just letting a star down. They're wasting a once-in-a-decade opportunity. Clark didn't come here to be a rebuild project. She came here to compete. And the clock on that promise is already ticking. So now, with the resignation finalized and the offseason frozen, what's the plan? Will the Fever go after a big-name free agent to fill Mitchell's role? Will they reshape their system to better protect Clark from overuse? Will they even acknowledge that this resignation was a blow, not just a transaction? Because if they don't move and fast, the dominoes are going to keep falling. More players may test free agency. Morale might drop. And by the time the next season tips off, the Fever could find themselves a shell of the team that almost broke through. It's hard to overstate just how critical this next window will be. Once the CBA is finalized, there won't be room for hesitation. The teams who act decisively will win. Those who sit back and hope for things to sort themselves out, they'll drown. Right now, Indiana looks dangerously close to the edge. So what happens next? Does the front office course correct and start treating the situation with the urgency it demands? Do they step up and build a system around Clark, not just on her back? Or do they let this moment slip and watch other franchises pass them by again? Kelsey Mitchell is gone. That's the headline. But the real story is just beginning. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Did the Fever just lose more than they realize? Can they recover from this? Or is this the beginning of another long, painful rebuild? Hit like if you're still in shock. Share if you think this offseason might be the wildest one yet. And subscribe if you're keeping score on every twist, turn, and breakdown from the W. We've got more to come.